The Museum of Military History Military History Institute in Vienna is the leading museum of the Austrian armed forces. It documents the history of Austrian military affairs through a wide range of exhibits comprising, above all, weapons, armors, tanks, aeroplanes, uniforms, flags, paintings, medals and badges of honor, photographs, battleship models, and documents. Although the museum is owned by the federal government, it is not affiliated to the federal museums but is organized as a subordinate agency reporting directly to the Ministry of Defense and Sports. The museum building and its history. The museum building is the centerpiece of Vienna's arsenal, a huge military complex previously consisting of a total of 72 buildings erected in the wake of the 1848-49th Revolution. The arsenal was the largest building project of the young Kaiser Franz Joseph I in his first years of reign, and served to consolidate his neo-absolutist position of power, as opposed to the revolutionary Vienna of 1848. It was Danish architect Theophil Hansen who designed what was then referred to as the Weapons Museum. The museum was completed on 8 May 1856, just 6 years after the beginning of construction, making it the oldest museum building planned and executed as such in Austria. At the time of its construction, the arsenal was located outside the outer ring of fortifications. In 1850, however, the area was incorporated into Vienna along with the original Favoriten. Along the southwest side of the arsenal ran the Vienna Railway, for which the main Vienna station, the Wiener Bahnhof, had been opened in 1848. The front, Hansen's plan provided for a 235-meter-long building with protruding transverse sections and corner towers, and a tower-like central segment with a square shape, crowned with a dome, with a total height of 43 meters. Just as many other historicist buildings borrowed models from historic architecture, Theophil Hansen chose the Venetian arsenal, built after 1104, is his prototype. He borrowed Byzantine-style elements, adding some Gothic elements in the process. What really stands out is the characteristic brickwork structure. The brickwork, consisting of two-toned bricks, is decorated with terracotta ornaments and wrought iron clasps. The segmentation of the facade is set off in natural stone, and the median risalit is rich with decorative elements such as the three round windows in front of the side wings. The richly adorned attic section is borne by a magnificent Lombard band reminiscent of Florentine palazzi. The dovetail crenellation is interrupted by turrets at the axes of the side wings and at the corners of the central part of the building, with terracotta trophy sculptures positioned inside their alcoves. Allegoric representations of military virtues made of sandstone are featured on and in front of the facade, created by Hans Gasser, one of the most influential sculptors of his time. Just below the round windows, the female figures represent strength, vigilance, piety, and wisdom, next to the three openings leading to the lobby are four male figures, which stand for bravery, loyalty to the flag, self-sacrifice, and military intelligence. The interior of the Museum of Military History is witness to the intention of Emperor Franz Joseph to create not just a building to house the imperial arms collections, but above all to establish a magnificent Hall of Fame and a memorial for the Imperial Army. The Feldherren Hall, for instance, exhibits 56 full-figure statues of Austria's most famous warlords and field commanders worthy of eternal emulation, as they are described in the Imperial Resolution of the 28th of February 1863. All statues are made of Carrara marble and stand equally tall at exactly 186 centimeters. The names and biographical data of those depicted can be found on plates located above each statue, while the base of each statue bears one of the 32 names of the artists who created them, the date it was installed, and the name of the patron who paid for the statue. Half of the costs were borne by Emperor Franz Joseph himself, and the rest was financed by private sponsors who were often descendants of the respective field commanders depicted. The chronological period covered by these statues ranges from the Margrave Leopold I of Babenberg to the Habsburg Archduke Charles. The staircase, too, was lavishly decorated. An additional 4 statues of field commanders are exhibited in the mezzanine, thus bringing the total to the aforementioned 60. Though contrary to the ones in the Feldherren Hall, these stand in considerably more elevated positions in wall niches. These portray important personalities of the revolutionary year 1848, namely those military leaders who at times very bloodily quelled the revolutionary efforts in all parts of the empire on behalf of the House of Habsburg. Julius von Haynau, Joseph Wenzel Radetzky, Alfred I, Prince of Windisch-Gratz, and Count Josip Ulachek of Buzum. Karl Ruhl was assigned with the pictorial decoration of the staircase, a task he carried out together with his students Christian Griepenkerl and Eduard Bitterlich in 1864. The center of the gold-ornamented ceiling features frescoes with allegorical depictions of power and unity, fame and honor, and cleverness and courage. The staircase is crowned by an allegorical marble sculpture group titled Austria, created by Johannes Bank in 1869. Indisputably, the most representative section of the entire museum is the Ruhmeshalle located in the first floor. A particular highlight of the Ruhmeshalle of the frescoes by Karl von Blas, portraying the most important military events in Austrian history since the times of the Babenberg dynasty. The 4 large wall arches show the victories of the Imperial Army, the Battle of Nordlingen 1634, the War Council at the Battle of St. Gotthard 1664, the Battle of Zenta 1697, and the Relief of Turin 1706. The left adjacent hall contains depictions of events during the reign of Maria Theresa and Joseph II until the siege of Belgrade in 1789. The right adjacent hall contains depictions of the Napoleonic Wars stretching from the Battle of Wurzburg in 1796 to Tyrol's struggle for freedom in 1809 and the armistice negotiations of Field Marshal Radetzky with King Vittorio Emanuele II of Sardinia following the Battle of Novara in 1849. The true significance of the Ruhmeshalle, that of a memorial, however, only becomes discernible at the second glance. On the walls of the adjacent halls and in the Ruhmeshalle itself one will find several marble plaques, bearing the names of over 500 officers' army as of the beginning of the 30 Years' War in 1618 until the end of World War I in 1918, indicating the place and date of their death. History. Although the museum building itself was already completed in 1856, work on its interior lasted until 1872. The collection was completed with pieces from the former courtarms collection of the Imperial Armory, the Imperial Private Collection in the Laxenburg Palace, and the Imperial Treasury in Vienna. Initially, the collection consisted exclusively of arms and trophies, with a major focus on suits of armor and weapons of the Imperial Leibbrustkammer. After the collection was systematically arranged, it was opened to the public as the K. Hofwaffen Museum in 1869. when construction of the Museum of Fine Arts began in Vienna in 1871. Many believed in the beginning of the 1880s that significant parts of the collections previously exhibited in the Hofwaffen Museum could be moved there. These considerations brought great uncertainty over the future and orientation of the K. Hofwaffen Museum. Therefore, a committee chaired by Crown Prince Rudolf was formed in 1885, assigned with the task of defining the new orientation of the museum, henceforth called the K. Here a museum. For thereon, the focus of the collections and exhibitions would be placed on the deeds of the Imperial Army. On the foundation meeting of the committee on the 22nd of February 1885, the Crown Prince underscored the purpose of the museum. He stressed the importance of the museum, which would contribute to glorifying the nimbus and the honor of the army, in which the genuine old imperial spirit lives on, which has held the imperial position in high esteem at all times and thus constitutes the symbol of cohesiveness of all people. For this reason, he hoped that the museum would come to life in the greatest possible magnificence. The committee consisted of the following members: Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria, Protector and Chairman; Archduke Wilhelm of Austria, Deputy Protector and Chairman; Quirin Ritter von Leitner, then Director of the Hofwaffen Museum; Alfred Ritter von Arneth, President of the Imperial Academy of Sciences; Johann Nepomuk, Count Wilczek, Patron and Collector, and main sponsor of the Pay-Away-Project Polar Expedition. Apart from the requests addressed to various military institutions, the committee also approached private civilians to obtain historic objects for the new museum. The principle applied was, the collections were to be divided into war trophies and otherwise historically interesting objects of exclusively Austrian origin which are of significance for the proper acknowledgement of the past of the Imperial and Royal Army in all its factors. Only originals were allowed to be exhibited, and projects and models were admissible only under special circumstances. As a result of the work of the committee and the generous support of the emperor, his family, the nobility, and the bourgeoisie, as well as the Imperial War Ministry, a plethora of treasures was gathered, which a contemporary individual can hardly imagine. Finally, on the 25th of May 1891, the new UK Hero Museum in the Arsenal was solemnly inaugurated by Emperor Franz Joseph and dedicated to its intended use. Once World War I broke out, the museum was immediately closed down for visitors. This was mainly attributed to the fact that so much material was appropriated from the various war theaters that it became impossible to manage an orderly exhibition. The end of the war in 1918 also seemed to bring the final curtain down for the museum. There was even a plan to sell the museum's collections to improve the precarious economic situation, but this was eventually averted. On September 1921, the building was reopened as the Österreichisches Heer Museum. For thereon, the museum was to focus primarily on documenting the most recent military events, especially those of World War I. The opening of a gallery for war paintings in 1923 marked the first time that the museum dedicated a large section to fine arts. These did not only depict army chiefs and battles, but also the everyday life of soldiers during wartime. Following Austria's annexation into the Third Reich, the museum was placed under the management of the Director of Military Museums in Berlin and was renamed the Herrenmuseum Wien. During World War II, the museum was once again inaccessible to the public, and admission remained reserved to military personnel. As of 1943, civilians were allowed into the museum as visitors only on weekends. During this time, the museum was primarily used for propaganda purposes. For instance, military campaigns of the Wehrmacht were documented in special propaganda exhibitions. Griechenland und Kreta 1941, Bild und Butte and Kampf vom Südost. As with all museums in Vienna, the most valuable collections were evacuated once the Allied bombings on Vienna began in autumn 1943. These measures proved absolutely necessary, since the arsenal and the Südbahnhof were directly hit by Allied bomber groups on the 10th of September and the 11th of December 1944, severely damaging or completely destroying not only the museum building but also several depots. Toward the end of the war, in particular during the so-called Vienna offensive, the arsenal grounds, too, were heavily damaged. During the occupation, many of the evacuated collection items that had survived the turmoil of war were requisitioned by the Allies. Several items, however, also fell victim to theft and looting by the soldiers of the Red Army and the civilian population. In the end, the museum faced the prospect of a complete shutdown. Despite the aforementioned difficulties, reconstruction of the museum already began in 1946 under the direction of Alfred Mell, who proposed what was eventually to become its final name, the Heeresgeschichtliches Museum. The management of the museum at the time received particular support from the Austrian Belvedere Gallery and the Museum of Fine Arts. The collection of ship models provided by the Vienna Technical Museum has remained the core attraction of the Marinesaal to this day. During the term of Rudolf Pöhringer as director, the museum, now called Heeresgeschichtliches Museum, was solemnly reopened by the Federal Minister for Education, Heinrich Dremmel, on 24 June 1955. In the post-war period, the halls of the reopened museum were designed primarily as exhibition areas for trophies. It was not until Johann Christoph Meyerbeck became the museum's director in 1965 that the exhibition areas were comprehensively renovated. The halls for the 16th and 17th century periods, and for the time between 1866 and 1914, were rebuilt and presented in a different design. The purpose was to go beyond the mere display of objects and to scientifically address the topic while thoroughly composing the halls as an artistic synthesis, matching the status of the institution as one of the world's most significant museums. Meyerbeck believed that the museum was not a place for maintaining tradition. Tradition must be maintained outside, inside. The objective is to make the history of the Austrian and Imperial Army visible, including those often neglected cultural and social elements. In September 1998, during the term of Manfred Rauschensteiner as director, the museum opened the Republik und Diktator Hall, which exhibited objects from the period from 1918 until 1945. On 9 December 2008, the Heeresgeschichtliches Museum was awarded the Austrian Museum Quality Seal, a distinction it received again in 2013. Following 2 years of construction under director Christian Ortner, the whole group on World War I opened its doors to the public in a modernized and redesigned form on 28 June 2014, just in time for the 100th anniversary of the assassination at Sarajevo.